As a psychologist, I've been telling people a lie for decades. This lie has had an impact on all of us. It's shaped the way we see ourselves, conduct our relationships, and it's reflected our sense of worth. And it sounds like a great thing. In fact, it's been memorialized in over 1 billion self-help resources. You must love yourself before you can truly love someone else. This is completely false. Generations of people believe there's something wrong with them because they don't love themselves, and yet they're in loving relationships with others. This creates even further difficulties with self-love. And worse, this myth is perpetuating our sense of separateness and reinforcing the belief that we're not good enough until we love ourselves. I fully believe in loving yourself. That's what I teach every day. But here's the truth. We need to redesign self-love. Loving yourself is not a destination. It's a process. We start to learn to love ourselves through our relationships. Feelings of self-doubt and not good enough, they're universal. But we can learn to love ourselves over our lifetime. Let's break this down. Your first experience of love is as a baby, and it's related to loving someone else. In fact, you don't even have the capacity to love yourself as a child. You connect with and rely on someone else for your basic needs. This starts the process of loving someone, and it goes hand in hand with developing trust. The next part involves receiving love. As you experience what it's like to be accepted and cared for, treated with kindness and compassion by someone else, this has an impact on how you perceive yourself. Research shows us that receiving love prompts greater increases in self-esteem and feeling good than giving love. This is basic biology and psychology. We know that developmentally, a child learns who they are only through their interactions with others. And because we're all human and imperfect, every child has experiences of feeling misunderstood, not cared for, or rejected. In secure attachment, what psychologists call good enough parenting, although the child has experiences of mistakes and misconnections when the very human caregiver misreads cues or is tired and yells, they're infrequent and are quickly repaired. This forms the foundation for the child to develop the capacity for self-love, as loving the caregiver, despite moments of imperfection, models the framework for love and acceptance of the self. As parents, we don't stop loving an addicted child or one who's committed a crime. We may not condone their actions, but we love them knowing they're imperfect. We accept them for who they are, including their flaws. Their poor choices don't make them unloved or unlovable. There's literally nothing in what we know about human development and neurobiology that suggests we need to love ourselves before we love someone else. In fact, all the evidence points in the opposite direction. We use the word love in a lot of different ways. Research has defined 2 major types of interpersonal love. Passionate love, that includes sexual desire and attraction, what we think of as romantic love, and attachment, known as compassionate love. Compassionate love is the all-encompassing definition that involves feelings, thoughts, and behaviors towards others that are caring, tender, and supportive. As anyone who's ever had any kind of relationship with another person knows, it's certainly possible to love someone and still not love yourself. Dr. Julie Gottman, expert relationship researcher, recently said, if all of us who are insecure needed to love ourselves first before having a relationship, nobody would be having one. So where did this idea of love yourself first come from? It was initially highlighted by a psychologist, Dr. Erich Fromm, in 1956. Prior to this, the psychological literature and general consensus was that loving yourself was a sign of arrogance, conceit, or egocentrism. Fromm was correct that knowing and respecting ourselves is important, but he missed the boat in making loving others contingent on self-love, because it's not. Self-love is the acceptance of oneself as imperfect, including those same flaws we see and accept in the people we love. When we step out of the false paradigm of love yourself first, we create the opportunity to enhance our relationships by acknowledging that we're capable of both loving and being loved. This moves us towards self-compassion and then self-love. However, mental health teaching and practice builds on the historical findings of others. Fromm's idea of love yourself first took hold, supported in different ways by other psychologists and researchers. When I came into the field of psychology in the early 1980s, I learned Fromm's contention as already accepted fact. That was good practice. And so I continued to perpetuate this myth for decades, both in how I saw myself and in how I guided clients and students. I'm just like you, a person with self-doubt and feelings of being not good enough that impede self-love. Growing up, I was very aware of not loving myself. Despite many positive external things, grades, friends, achievements, I struggled with loving myself, although I easily loved others. Of course, that didn't mean I was universally loved in return. The idea of needing to love myself before I could truly love someone else was reinforced in graduate school. That's what we taught people when they came into therapy, concerned about not having positive, lasting, fulfilling relationships. We'd work on the concept of self-love as the doorway to positive relationships and love. Truthfully, I never questioned this. It seemed to make sense. And since I wasn't doing so great in the long-term romantic relationship area, I figured it was because I didn't love myself enough. And so I continued this vicious cycle of trying to prove that I was worthy and failing, reinforcing my feelings of not good enough. What I wasn't realizing was that I had been receiving compassionate love from friends and family all along. I dismissed the worth and impact of that, believing it would all be found in a romantic relationship. Even when I met and married my husband, my self-doubt was still prevalent and my lack of self-love was still a major internal force. In reality, it was opening up fully to someone else, learning about self-compassion, and recognizing the power of all my prior relationships that began to help me feel better. I learned that these people that I cared about and trusted, they saw the real me, and they still loved me. This started me towards self-compassion and then self-love. And we now know from the research into vulnerability and self-compassion by Brené Brown and Kristin Neff that self-compassion is the root to self-acceptance. And accepting yourself as both flawed and worthy, that's the start of self-love. fMRI studies of brain activation show that generating compassion for the self involves the same neural processes as generating compassion for others. We learn to love ourselves by using the framework of compassionate love that we have for others and applying it to ourselves. The idea that I accept the person I love, referring to someone else, models the pathway to love and accept ourselves. We see and accept others as flawsome, and we need to do this for ourselves. My formula to redesign self-love comes from looking at and identifying what it's like to love someone else as a flawed human, and then applying it to ourselves using these steps. L, O, V, E. L, laughter, because laughter increases dopamine and helps us feel better. O, opening to self-compassion by using the framework of compassionate love that we feel for others and receive in return. V, vulnerability, recognizing that our self-doubt and feelings of not good enough, they're part of our humanity. They're not a reflection of our worth. And E, engaging with others, because it's through our relationships that we receive the feedback and strengthening of compassionate love that helps us feel worthy. There isn't a finish line to self-love. It's a lifelong process, and it starts with giving and receiving love. We learn to love through our relationships. We're literally biologically designed to learn, grow, and love through others. No matter our current limitations in self-love, we can love others, and we need to. In rejecting the myth of love yourself first, we're daring to believe that we can love in spite of ourselves. And that begins to counteract our feelings of self-doubt and moves us to the core truth. We're all human, fallible, and worthy. I dare you to recognize love in your life and start to fall in love with yourself today.